Greetings and salutations, fellow book readers. This is Mark, and the book I will review today is Walden. I am here outside of Barcelona at the foothills of the Pyrenees Mountains on a beautiful February day. The temperature is in the high teens, for the Americans in the 60s, and it is just beautiful weather. So I thought I would record this video next to my Walden Pond, right behind me. Before we continue, this is personalized limited edition of Walden with leather cover, designed and made by me. At the end of the video, I will tell you a couple of ways of how you can get one for yourself if you are interested. Now let's get back to the review. Walden, or Life in the Woods, is a personal memoir by an American writer, Henry David Thoreau, published in 1854. It is one of, if not the best known and most popular of his books. His other important work was on civil disobedience, which he also practiced and occasionally paid for. Thoreau was a naturalist, philosopher, and a leading figure in the Transcendentalist movement, which basically embodied the idea of the individual as a free thinker and his struggle against the oppressive rules imposed on him by the society. He inspired peaceful resistance against the governmental abuse and is the founding philosophy behind the modern environmental activism. Thoreau was the original libertarian, a rebel against our way of living, and an opposer of the organized systems such as religion and politics. I think his political feelings are best captured in this quote from him: "Government is best which governs least." I think this would be a good slogan for the modern Libertarian Party, instead of the current one, the Party of Principle. I can imagine Thoreau asking why the party and what principle. What is Walden about? Perhaps it is said the best by the author himself in this short excerpt from the book. "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived." Walden is about living simply and independently. Thoreau describes his experiences living in a cabin he built himself by the Walden Pond. The cabin was on a lot located outside his hometown of Concord, Massachusetts, owned by his friend and mentor, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Thoreau spent a total of 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days there in the 1840s, which he compressed into 1 calendar year in the book. And he uses passages of 4 seasons to symbolize human growth and development. "Live in each season as it passes. Breathe the air, drink the drink, taste the fruit, and resign yourself to the influence of the earth." Now, a bit of the plot. The plot is a collection of 18 chapters, each one focusing on a specific theme, and the titles of the chapters are rather self-explanatory. The first chapter is called Economy, and it outlines Thoreau's project specifications and objectives to illustrate the spiritual benefits of a simple lifestyle. Basically, to get as much as you can from doing as little as possible. Chapter 2 is Where I Lived and What I Lived For, where Thoreau spends most of the time thinking about places he lived in. In Chapter 3, Reading, Thoreau stresses the importance of reading classical literature. He argues it is better to read the originals in Greek or Latin instead of translations. Chapter 4, Sounds, is about observation and perception. Chapter 5, Solitude, talks about being alone and loneliness, which can occur even if one is surrounded by society. Chapter 6, Visitors, where Thoreau admits to taking pleasure in spontaneous companionship while he is enjoying solitude. Chapter 7, The Bean Field, is about sowing and reaping. Chapter 8, The Village, talks about Thoreau's visits to town, which he does several times a week. It kind of goes against the whole philosophy of living by and for yourself. Chapter 9, The Ponds, talks about geographical features of the local ponds. Chapter 10, Baker Farm, is about meeting his neighbor, who is a poor but ambitious Irish immigrant. Chapter 11, Higher Laws, focuses on vegetarian lifestyle, but it also discusses chastity, work, and abstinence from alcohol. In Chapter 12, Brute Neighbors, Thoreau talks about sharing space with his animal friends. Chapter 13, Housewarming, is about preparations for the coming winter. Chapter 14, Former Inhabitants and Winter Visitors, talks about the people who in the past lived around the Walden Pond and the people who visit him. Chapter 15, Winter Animals, is about Thoreau watching winter behavior of the animals. In Chapter 16, The Pond in the Winter, Thoreau talks about the winter appearance of the Walden Pond and measures its depth. Chapter 17, Spring, where Thoreau happily watches the melting of Walden Pond and rebirth of life. And finally, Chapter 18, Conclusion, where Thoreau warns us about conformity and its determinant to finding happiness and self-fulfillment. And that's the basic plot. Now, what can I say about Walden? Well, I like the book because I didn't have any expectations. I didn't look for something to learn from or some kind of complex plot, but what I wanted from this book is a relaxing escape from everyday routine, and it delivered. I enjoyed the somewhat archaic written language with its outdated vocabulary and how it imposed a lazy pace of reading. It made me feel similar to lying in the grass on a warm summer day and watching a slow-moving river. Also, I read Walden a couple of times before, but this time I think I connected more with Thoreau's ideas, and some of them sounded very appealing, such as working one day and relaxing 6. As I get older, I appreciate leisure time more than using it to make money, and the whole idea of living simply and economically. Nowadays, we are being constantly bombarded with publicity to have, to buy, or to possess, and it is good to learn how to disconnect. And this is what Walden might do for you. The book will probably make you appreciate life more, the little things that seem unimportant in the modern world, but not valuing them might be the cause of many problems we face as individuals and society. It might make you see beauty in the simple things that you don't have to spend time to acquire. But if you are looking for practical tips on how to live a simple life, you might be disappointed. Thoreau's lifestyle might be a difficult act to follow nowadays. That being said, learning to live simply with a few possessions will benefit your psychological health during the times of struggle, which might be a bit more common in the future. Thoreau is an observer, and he mentions that you can learn from watching as well as from reading. I myself like to read, but I know people who never read, but have acquired a lot of knowledge over time through experience. Books are a shortcut to knowledge, but to get to some places you cannot take shortcuts. So it might behoove to do both, read and observe. Yes, there are some inconsistencies between the book's message and Thoreau's own life. He tells us how much he likes isolation at Walden, but would welcome visitors, and he visited the town a few times a week. And while living at the Walden Pond, he would every Sunday have dinner at his mother's house. Further, he says that he finds inside himself dual instincts, one for the spiritual life and the other to live like an animal. Well, perhaps either one doesn't have to be exclusive of the other, and you can do both. Thoreau also prized the physical and moral benefits of the vegetarian lifestyle, but would occasionally kill animals and eat meat. On one of his walks, he sees a woodchuck and feels the urge to devour him raw. Thoreau's life seemed to be a struggle between what he wanted to do and what he could or should do. Also, we can wonder if the simple life was so good, why didn't he stay? And why he never went back? The question is simple life a temporary solution or a lifelong effort? I guess each one has to answer this question himself, based on his own needs and preferences. People seem to confuse simple with easy, which is not. I don't think Thoreau was the best example of a simple life. That's why he only lasted 2 years. He was an intellectual and liked the idea, but not so much the practical application. At least he didn't see it as a permanent solution to his life problems. But I myself don't like to dismiss the message because of the shortcomings of the messenger. Some people think that Thoreau was ahead of his time and his ideas apply to the present. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think his ideas are timeless. They float around and are transmitted from person to person, and there are people like Thoreau who know how to popularize them. To sum it up, Walden is a reflection on simple living in nature, self-reliance and spirituality, and there are different reasons why you could want to read it. There are readers who connect with Thoreau's Transcendentalist movement and the issues he discusses, and there are others like myself who enjoy the relaxing tone and pace of the book and use it as an escape from sometimes too demanding and monotonous routine of modern life. If Walden was an activity, it would be like going fishing or walking in the woods. It is relaxing and enjoyable for some and boring for others. The book was written almost 2 centuries ago, but many of Thoreau's views apply to the present. The timeless message is that by not having a lot, you learn how to live simply, and perhaps that's the real happiness. Also, it is important not to fall into a routine of conformity and to have your own opinions that don't follow society's norms. I can see some similarities between Walden and the writings of Jiddu Krishnamurti, so if you enjoy the latter, you probably will enjoy the former. I read and reread Walden over different periods of my life and in different manners. You can read it daily in one long haul, but it can be difficult. Or you can do it sporadically, chapter by chapter, over a long period of time, which I found more enjoyable. So, to finish it, I like the book, but I know people who hated it. You will need to decide for yourself if you are up to the task, or if your time would be better spent on some other activity. Okay, let's talk about the physical book. The book I am holding is a paper bag which I transform into a hardcover, leather-bound edition. To make the cover, I use grade A naturally tan hide I buy from a tanner in North Spain. It is the same leather Louis Vuitton uses to make his bags, so it is top quality. I do all the processing of the leather myself. First, I designed the cover, which what I did here. I took a photo of a New England pond and turned it into a watercolor painting. And all of it goes nicely with the subject of the book. If you want to see a more detailed video where I explain how I transform paper bag into leather-bound hardcover, click on the link in the description. I will make a maximum of 100 editions of each title. Each one will be numbered and initialed, and the numbers will go in chronological order from 2 up, since number 1 stays with me. The price will be around $100, so if you would like me to make one for you, you can click below on my email and send me a message. I do not guarantee I will do it, since it will depend on the time I have available, access to the leather, and if I can get my hands on the copy of the book. Now, if you're not willing to spend the $100, but you still want the book, what you can do is click below on the PayPal link and donate $3 or more to my channel, and for every 100 donations, I will make a lottery and draw one name, and the winner will receive the book. So, if you are cheap but feel lucky, this might be the way to do it. Also, your donations give me the extra motivation to make the book reviews and I appreciate them very much. So thank you in advance. One more thing. When you make your donation, remember to include the title of the book you would like to win. The book itself is beautiful. Visually, it has a very nice texture. It smells great. And the more you handle it, the more beautiful it will become. And it makes a great gift for yourself or somebody who appreciates books. So if you want one, don't snooze or you might lose. Well, that's it. So let's end it here. And until next time, keep your ear close to the ground and read a book. Adios.